One of the most common goals that people come to us with is to improve their body composition and in particular lose body fat. I'm James Ballantyne, performance coach at Absolute Health and Performance. When I work with a client whose primary goal is fat loss, I break it down into 4 key areas. Non Exercise Activity Thermogenesis, so the exercise that they do or the movements they do throughout the day, which doesn't involve sleep, training, or any other strenuous physical activity. So an example of N.E.A.T can be walking up the stairs, taking the train to work, riding your bike to work, going for a leisurely stroll. All those things contribute to N.E.A.T. The next thing that I look at is their food consumption. And what I'll normally do in that situation is also refer out to our dietitian at N.E.A.T, who can provide people with a more direct and guided approach to the nutrition if that's what they need. The other component I look at is their physical activity and their training. So what are they doing throughout the week in a very specific and focused way to generate the adaptations that are going to be beneficial for enhancing fat loss but also retaining lean body mass. The other key component when we're trying to achieve fat loss is the thermic effect of food. So the energy the body expends to break down and metabolize the nutrients in the food that you eat. In particular, we look at increasing protein, as this has a higher thermic effect and takes more energy for the body to metabolize and process, and also contributes to the retention or increase in our lean body mass, which is incredibly important over the long term if we want to maintain the fat loss after our program. So if we look from the calorie expenditure side, we want to look at how we can increase the energy someone expends, which is going to drive a greater deficit and result in increased body fat loss. So when we're looking at this, there's 2 simple things that we can do. We can monitor and then adjust the person's N.E.A.T, and a simple way to do this is to track their steps. This is an objective measure which won't capture all the N.E.A.T, but it will capture a greatest proportion of the N.E.A.T, and then that'll allow us to adjust that. And what I typically find is if someone has very low N.E.A.T levels, maybe they're walking or getting less than 3,000 to 5,000 steps a day, the first point is to raise that up 15 to 25% and start getting some consistency with an increase in their base N.E.A.T expenditure over the course of the day, week, and the month. And what you can do with the steps as well is periodize it across a fat loss phase so that it's not necessarily a linear decrease in calories consumed, but you can have a changing variable of the steps per day, which can then impact on calorie expenditure and drive that calorie deficit. That's the most important thing to decreasing our body fat. The other component to increasing energy expenditure and also to driving positive body composition changes is our training. And what we want to look at as a minimum is performing 2 full body strength training or resistance training sessions alongside cardiovascular work. And we want to do this at least twice a week. If we can do it 3 times a week, that's even better. But as a minimum, we want to be getting at least those 2 sessions of really high quality work, which is going to be important for a number of reasons. Firstly, resistance training is going to either maintain or increase our lean body mass while we're in the energy deficit that's driving our fat loss. And the second thing is the cardiovascular work is going to help with increasing our energy expenditure, which is going to further drive that energy deficit that we're looking to achieve to get our fat loss goal. One of the key considerations is how do you track progress? So when we're looking to assess change over time, particularly when we're looking for body composition changes, I like to use 3 key criteria. So the first one is utilizing the scales. Now, it's not that the number on the scale is the most important thing, but what we get from utilizing body weight on the scale is to track change over time. It provides an objective and reliable measure as long as we're doing it in the morning, first thing after we go to the bathroom, and we have either no clothes on or the same clothes on every time we do it. Now, what I like to do is get someone to weigh in 3 times a week on non-consecutive days, and we track an average across the week and look at the change over time, week to week, and even month to month and phase to phase across the course of the fat loss phase. Another popular method or methods is to use skin folds or DEXA scan or a BIA or body scanner. Now, the difference with these is we get one flashpoint over the course of 4 weeks rather than that regular feedback from the change on the scales. So if we can use multiple methods to track change over time, then it allows us to really assess what is actually changing, separate the real change from the noise, and better tailor the program to the individual. Now, the last one that I like to use is a little bit more subjective, you could say, compared to the 2 objective methods we've just spoken about. But the last one is finding some clothing that you like to wear and using that as a bit of a subjective measure of how your body's changing relative to how you feel in that piece of clothing. And what this provides is a great contrast to the very objective measures where we might not see change on the scales or significant changes with our objective measurements like a DEXA scan, but what we actually see is that there's change in our composition that we can actually feel when we're wearing clothing, which can be a pretty powerful motivator for people if the other more objective measures aren't necessarily moving as quickly as they'd like. To summarize, when you're looking to achieve an improvement in body composition and a primary goal of reducing body fat, we need to remember that creating a calorie deficit or an energy deficit is the most important thing. That is the foundation upon which a successful fat loss or body composition phase is built. Therefore, we need to remember to reduce our calorie consumption from food, increase our energy expenditure from exercise, ensure we're doing resistance and cardiovascular training at least twice a week, if not 3 times. And we also need to remember that we can utilize N.E.A.T to increase our energy expenditure as well. Finally, we want to have multiple methods of tracking progress so that we can see change over time and also influence the program design to better help the individual to achieve their final goal.